This is Cadillac Unscripted on 107.9 CDY. It's sponsored by Independent Bank, and we like to talk about the good things going on in the community. And someone who has been at the helm of the positive things happening in the community, thanks to a whole bunch of local voters, is our very own Jennifer Brown, Cadillac Area Public Schools Superintendent. Jen, how are you today?
Oh, I'm good, and thanks so much for having me.
You are very welcome. Katy Huckle is with me right now. She's throwing on the headphones.
Here we go.
And so there's so much to talk about. So, Jen, why don't we start with where all the construction is at? Obviously, Lincoln and got finished, and we also finished up Franklin School, and now things are happening at the junior high. So give us an update.
Yes. Yeah, it's an exciting time. If you remember years ago, the community really rallied around the schools and our kids and supported a large bond proposal that was going to renovate, remodel all of the buildings, K-12, so that we are set up for the next 30 to 50 years. So phase one really was focused on the elementary and our preschool programming to allow us to renovate the existing buildings and add some new classroom space to bring fifth grade from the middle school back to the elementary. Developmentally, we really felt strongly that our fifth graders belonged in an elementary setting, and we're really excited that that transition is complete and our kids are finding great success in the elementary buildings. Our preschool building, Viking Learning Center, is Old Kenwood, and that building was designed to meet the needs of preschool learners. So fenced-in play area with developmentally appropriate play equipment, classrooms that were designed for preschool learners. So that has been a raging success as well. We're full there. We actually did open up an additional preschool classroom this year, and I think there's a couple slots left there for free preschool with our GSRP program.
And you've also
and then
repurposed.
You also did receive in that phase one renovations, heating and cooling, some upgrades as well at the playground, security. Every one of our buildings has a secure vestibule. Safety was a high priority for us. So that was phase one.
Mm-hmm.
And then phase two wrapped up this past fall with Mackinac Trail. So we moved our 8th grade from the junior high to Mackinac Trail Middle School, so that is a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade building, and we added an 8th grade wing so that we could create some separation from our 6th and 7th and 8th grade students, because developmentally they are in different places and have some different needs, but the middle school model and philosophy is really about whole child and meeting kids where they are with their social, emotional learning as well as their academic needs. So really excited about the work going on at Mackinac Trail Middle School. They've been working with a middle school consultant out of Central Michigan University, and not only is the physical environment more conducive to middle school, but the programming that they have is really incredible. We're giving kids industrial arts, digital arts, STEAM programming, and looking to add some more intramural middle-level sports options and activities for kids as well.
You hit on a buzzword in your last comment there, social emotional learning. Mm-hmm. This is something that I am learning about because I'm on the SEL team at the CTC. So can you describe, Jen, what the goal of social emotional learning is for our kids?
To put it cleanly, I'd like to say that it's just the emotional health of our kids. If kids don't feel seen, known, heard, and valued, they're not likely to be learning. So we want to make sure each of our kids' needs are met, that they have some of the competency skills that we all need in life to be successful with, how to manage our own impulses, how to take responsibility, some of those competencies that may not be measured by a math or English test that are certainly essential for the success of our kids.
Right. Some of it comes down to coping, doesn't it, Jen?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Some self-awareness, self-management, coping, resilience, awareness of others, empathy, a lot of those basic skills, just to be kind to people, allow for an environment that is emotionally safe, which then allows kids to learn.
Wow.
And one of the concepts, Katy, is relationship building. So you want to build a one-on-one relationship with these kids, prove to them that you care. And once they know you care about them, they will learn better.
I see.
Plain and simple.
Isn't that something? I mean, I go back to reading, writing, and arithmetic, Superintendent Jen. And so you guys are talking about a whole nother world. For those of us not in education, we're getting educated about what these kids need.
Yes. And it's challenging because those hours have changed, and it is hard to build relationships and to deal with the reading, writing, and arithmetic, and all of the other stresses and pressures of what's come with COVID and everything else. But what we do know is if we don't address the social emotional learning piece first, the rest just doesn't fall in place.
Understand.
It's almost like the hierarchy of needs. That's the basis right there.
Well,
that's
Maslow there. Yep.
Yep. Exactly.
Wow. And so first you determined that this was impeding learning, and then your team, I guess I'm asking the question, then you had to wrap your arms around how to address it. Is that right, Jen?
Yeah, I would say since I've been in teaching, which is unfortunately a really long time in education, we know and have always prioritized relationships, but putting a framework to that, a more intentional way to talk about that with kids so they can start to take some of that responsibility on and learn those skills. It's gone beyond just build a good relationship. It's really about explicit teaching of those skills, giving kids opportunities to practice those skills and reflect, and then learn and grow.
You mentioned intramural sports, which that got me thinking. Are you putting the kids together more often in a situation, or trying to, without phones or technology, to build? Can you explain that, where that came up in the prioritization of what needs to happen at the middle school?
So yes, we are trying to find ways that kids feel connected to school and to each other, and then also a sense of self. So I think that's that whole child middle school philosophy, and phones are really a big challenge to kids gaining a good sense of self and establishing healthy relationships. So if I had my way, we as parents, and guilty as charged, would not arm our children with cell phones or mobile technology well into late adolescence. It's just such a barrier. The social media, I think, is obviously having some mental health implications for our young adults as well. And so our focus is at middle school, and not just intramurals, but they're doing outdoor ed. So when I say intramurals, it's not just your traditional school sports. It's really looking at all kinds of activities that the kids are interested in, and then providing them opportunities to socialize and practice those skills together in a supportive, healthy environment.
Wow. Let's talk about your staff for a minute. How have you built such a strong team and kept morale up?
Well, we are very blessed in Cadillac to have amazing staff. I say it every time I get a chance. We just have a great team, from our custodians, cooks, bus drivers, to our teachers, our paraprofessionals, all the way to our administrators. They're so vested in kids in this community. We're just really fortunate. I'm not going to say that our morale is not struggled in the last 18 months. It has been a real struggle to keep energy high, to keep positivity high, to see the results of really hard work and stay focused on that. So that has been a topic of conversation all year, both internally and even across the ISD with local superintendents. Just this focus on not just kid social emotional, but adult social emotional needs. And everyone, if you look around, and not just in education, I think healthcare and other businesses, private and public, they're just tired.
Yes.
So, Rich and I were just talking a little bit ago about just this perpetual negative conversation, and how do we lift each other and ourselves out of that to, stay focused on, things that we should be appreciative for and the good that is still here in Cadillac. And although exhausted, our work is still amazing and has a legacy for our kids and for the community.
I will say that the kids who were at the end of ninth grade who lost their last 2 months to 3 months of their school year, they're now 11th graders this year.
Isn't that something?
It is, but I will tell you, the problems linger on. The emotional issues linger. Jen, I don't know if you've talked with some students, but I can tell you some of the kids that I have talked to that are in the digital media production class, learning via screen and being isolated from their friends was not good for them.
I see.
And there was no other way around it, but are you hearing that too, Jen?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes. If you ask kids how they learn best, and I think it initially there was an allure to online learning, maybe it'd be nice to be in my pajamas and learn from home. That faded very quickly, and I think if you asked most kids if they had to take an online class, they'd rather do that even in a school setting than at home. They're social beings by nature, and they need and crave that social interaction with their peers and with staff and adults. So I would say yes. I think there are very few kids who thrive in an online setting, isolated away from others.
I will tell you, I would love to do a documentary with some of our kids and actually sit them down and say, how was the pandemic for you? Really, talk to me, because it is really shocking. There is a misconception out there, Jen. I believe that people thought the kids had it easy. They're sitting at home, they're learning on their screens. They don't even have to get out of their PJs. That's not what they wanted.
Right?
It was not what they wanted. So I would love to do a documentary that dispels that myth right here and now.
Ooh, wow.
So that is a project that I think I'm going to take on this year in the classroom, talking with some of my kids.
Jen, I think our listeners, yeah, sure would. I think our listeners would be curious to know from your perspective, our students, not just our students, but nationally, are they behind in terms of what they should know right now?
Yes, the data would say that our students nationally, and probably globally, but I've only looked at the national data, are lagging behind due to COVID. So our pre-pandemic achievement numbers nationally and statewide dropped significantly. I will say I'm proud of our school and schools in this area for keeping our doors open. Although we did see a dip, we did not see the dip that most schools in the state and nationally saw through the last 18 months. Okay. So although we did slide a bit, I do credit our staff and our parents and our kids for coming to school, even when it was hard, and doing the work, because we did not see as significant as a drop. So all of that right now we are very hyper-focused on and closing those gaps, and I'm super excited to say our mid-year data check showed that we are closing those gaps, and the hard work of the staff and that exhaustion is paying forward and for our kids. So that's great to see. 2020
was the year that everything fell apart. March through June, there was no school. And then the following school year, a significant part of that school year was one day on, one day off, the blue and the gold situation. And what do you think, Jen, if you were to guess, and you probably have access to the data, what grade do you think was harmed the most by what happened in 2020?
So that is so difficult, because I think each grade had a unique impact.
True.
So we actually had some conversation like, oh, geez, I had my own children impacted differently. But then I thought, well, at least I didn't have a first grader who was learning to read, right? Mm-hmm. At least I didn't have a kindergartner who was their first school experience who might not like school, because that's not what school is. At least I didn't have a middle-level child who's already, hormonal and unstable with more instability. So I think really each group really had different impact, and it is hard to say which was the worst or most impacted, because I think and then you think about subgroups, right? So you have students who are underrepresented or have exposed to poverty, and were they more severely impacted by unemployment or homelessness or foster care?
Or the availability of the internet in your house?
Lose a parent, not necessarily to COVID, but, like loss in general. So It's hard to tell. I think everybody saw significant impact, but I also think like I said before, I think we need to start talking about now what. Like, how do we respond to that is really important. And we get to control that. I tell kids all the time, you don't always get to control what happens to you, but how you respond is in your control.
Right.
So what are we going to do about it?
Right.
So it's okay to be upset, but we just can't stay there.
Right. For pre-college testing and things like that, can students meet with their teachers to say, I know I'm behind, what do I need to do to be ready to test?
Yes. So our juniors right now, which is that high-stakes college entrance exam, they have an option to take a test prep class, which is individualized.
Okay.
I know our counselors are counseling kids to say universities are not weighting the college entrance exams the way they did before. A lot of them are even waiving the college entrance exam. So not to stress out about that, that they're not unique or alone, that everyone's going to see some impact in that. And thankfully, our colleges and universities are responding appropriately and saying, if we do require it, we're not weighting it the way we used to. And a lot of them are just saying it's not required to apply anymore.
And I think that's fantastic because, Jen, in all honesty, there are some brilliant kids who aren't test takers. And there are some test takers who maybe aren't as smart as their test scores indicate. I firmly believe that's true, don't you think, Jen? Yeah.
Well, and you know, and I know, a good test, having a good test score on that day is probably a very poor predictor of lifelong success, right?
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
So much weight on such a, I don't know. I don't agree with the high stakes testing in general, but that one certainly would be the top of my list to get rid of.
Right. Ambition and initiative are in there, aren't they, Jen?
Yes.
That success equation. Yeah. If money were no object, if you could do anything for a fix, and I mean, I know this is a big question, but what would you do? If someone handed you a pot of money and said, Jen, what needs to be done next? What would you do with that money?
So first and foremost, I think the number one crisis, like on my mind right now, is just the shortages in teacher shortage, but also in our behavioral health shortage. I would certainly employ a behavioral health specialist for every building, a social worker who could work with kids who are really struggling in a more clinical way so that parents didn't have to worry about scheduling appointments. Like, it would just be there during the school day so our kids felt they had really easy access to behavioral health. Because our kids are struggling with all the instability, and we know that has to be addressed first. Mm-hmm. And then I would really look at what are the short and long-term fixes for getting certified professional staff into schools. We are really facing a crisis of not having teachers, paraprofessionals, support staff, counselors to be able to serve kids. And more than ever, that's the most important thing.
If you had the governor's ear, is that what you would say?
Yeah.
This is what we need?
And I have emailed the governor, written a letter. So, and she has in her budget outlined some really exciting ways to address retention of current professional staff and recruitment of professional staff. And I hope that is, I hope that's where we land with the budget. And I think allowing for that investment in education will allow schools to then also retain the staff we have and raise, starting wages for professional staff and support staff so that we can recruit great people. Because we need people, but we need great people.
You need people who put the kids first.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Can you speak to the teacher crisis? I mean, it's such a solid living and such a solid education, that they need to back up teaching certificates. I mean, it shocks me that we've got a teaching shortage, Jen. What's going on?
Well, yeah, and I think it's complex, right? I think it is years and years of a devaluing of the educational system in not just Michigan, but similar states to Michigan. And I think they're just, colleges have reported for years that the kids aren't going into education. So in a time where we need our brightest and our best to go into education. We need to incentivize that again. It is an amazing career. I don't regret it for a second. I love kids and I love education. I believe in public education. I think it's really the backbone of democracy, and we have to have it. And certainly when we are, in communities, and like I said, Cadillac, we're blessed to have an amazing community that supports kids, but that's not the case everywhere. So, it shouldn't matter where a child lives and grows up. They should have access to great education so they can change the circumstances. So I do think there has to be an intensive, intentional plan to address that shortage. And it sounds like it's a priority. So I'm very excited to hear that.
I would love to see more people go into teaching, people with a heart for kids. And really, Jen, in all honesty, if I were to start over again, I would get a counseling degree. It is so needed right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 51, so I have fewer working years left than what I have behind me. But in spending time with the kids in our classroom, just sitting down and talking with them and getting to know them and that goes back to that social emotional learning piece. You get to know them, that they'll work for you. They will want to do well by you. So,
and they're fun.
Yes.
They're great to work with.
They
I have
sure
to say,
are.
the most rewarding part is it's the kids. They're great.
Right. So, Jen, part of the issue, I think, is, okay, you identify a need and it's an immediate need, but you didn't know that it was coming. So how do you backfill, with, behavioral health specialists when we didn't know that need was out there, so we don't have people in place? And it's almost like you're reacting because you have to, and there aren't enough people.
Well, and that is absolutely the truth with what we're seeing on the backside of COVID is that everybody is screaming for support, social work, behavioral health, and there just aren't enough to go around. And if we do incentivize it, it's years out. So what do we do in the interim? So thankfully, we have great people in place. We have counselors in every building, and we have behavioral health in most buildings. I mean, I would triple that fleet of people, but I feel blessed to have that. A lot of schools don't. So we have really great people, and we have partnerships with our local physician organization to provide us additional support, and the health department who's got a wellness center on site. So we definitely have some great systems in place, but we could use more.
I've heard that time and time again in Cadillac from the business community interacting with education interacting with healthcare, meaning collaboration. And that's such a gift. Even in the nonprofit sector, everybody works together to determine what the need is and then who best to address that need. So it gives me chills for you to say, you've got extra folks in healthcare that, expand hours or whatever to help your students.
So for those of us who drive by Chestnut Street every morning, we see, you're laughing already, you know where I'm headed with this, Jen. There is major remodeling going on and a big project going on at the junior high. So for those of us who aren't inside that building right now, tell us what's happening there.
Sure. So no one's inside that building right now.
Okay.
We built,
except the workers.
We moved the 8th grade, thankfully, the 8th grade to Mackinac Trail this year. We built a temporary wall after trimester 1, moved everybody out of that side of the building, so that corridor that connects the junior high and the high school is now walled off. And they are working on demolition of the 2-story academic wing to the south. That will be torn down, and a 30-classroom addition will be built in its place. And we spent about a year attempting to design within the confines of that 2-story existing addition. And the way it was built with an atrium in the middle was, at the end of the day, cost prohibitive. We could just not get big enough classrooms with the structure without blowing the budget because of the limitations of how it was built originally. So they recommended we scratch it, demo it, and build it new. And then we could design classes with enough square footage, natural light, because there's no windows on the interior of that as well. New HVAC, plumbing, because all of that had to be replaced anyway. And we came out about the same price point. So although it took us a year to get there, it is the right project. And then the rest of the building is going to be renovated, including a new cafeteria lobby space. It's more designed like a collegiate cafeteria with a more flexible space, a commons, place for kids to hang out, which they just don't have right now. And then auditorium's going to get renovated to have new seating, new lighting, new stage, paint, flooring. That should look like a new space. Let's see, our science classrooms and the corridor down by the media center will all have some new finishes, and the entire complex obviously will be heating and cooling, plumbing, electric is all being renovated. And we're going to put the wellness center down by the high school, what is the current high school, with a weight room on the first floor, some locker room renovations, but it will feel like a brand new school, and we're excited about that.
How are you going to be handling? I know you've shifted one full grade to a different building. So when the high school gets renovated, how are you going to work around that?
So currently, it's going to be very complicated and complex.
I'm sure it
I'm
will.
Looking right now at our 4-phase high school building plan, and phase 1 is already commenced, and it's the demolition and renovation and build of that junior high side, and that should be done in the fall of 23. It's about a year and a half. The current classrooms by the media center and all of the choir room and the orchestra room, robotics lab, that will all be done in the summers of 22, 23, and 24. So those summer months are going to be very busy months for us. And then the auditorium will be in winter of 23 and will be done by fall of 23. So that's going to be like 6-month project. And then the current high school demolition of a couple of the end wings we're going to demolish, and then renovation of the wellness center, weight room, locker rooms will be winter of 24, full project completion in the fall of 2024.
So that means the kids who are in 10th grade right now will be seniors, hopefully, fingers crossed, right, when the whole project is finished.
When it's finished, but our 9th graders will start their senior year.
Okay.
Is that right? I think the 9th grade will start their senior year in the new building.
Okay, gotcha. How exciting.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Progress in Cadillac. It's wonderful.
I know.
So
it is exciting.
It is. I want to go back to Jen Brown. What is your favorite part about your job?
Well, my favorite part about my job is when I get to talk to kids. I do miss that the most about teaching, and even being the assistant principal at the high school allowed me to interact with kids a lot. So I love watching them in their element, visiting buildings. I was a secondary English teacher, so when I get to visit elementary schools and they run up and they give you a hug, and they remember you and they know you and they want to show you their cool new boots or a hand tattoo, it just warms your heart. That is my favorite part of the job.
Right. So what year did you become superintendent?
Oh, geez. I think this is my 8th year.
Okay. So we're going to go back to that year, and all of a sudden, hey, Jen, look back, right? If you knew then what you know now, right? Think of your growth personally and professionally. Would you still take the job, Jen?
I would here. I'll say that. I would in Cadillac.
Because you know what team you're working for.
People.
Yeah.
I would not elsewhere.
Is that right?
It's such hard work, great work, but if you don't value the people or have those relationships or care about like the faces you see, when I go out in the community, I see, I know most people,
right,
and I care. So if I didn't have that, it would be really hard to make the right decisions for people, and I just don't know that I would enjoy it.
And I think that's the beauty of having someone from the hometown serving in this role.
She's organic.
You're
100%.
You were invested in the system from the beginning.
Absolutely, and Matt too, her husband too.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely. Oh, that, my face hurts from smiling when you said that because it's so true. And we're so lucky to have a committed superintendent. COVID has given some people a pass to coast, and you did the opposite, Jen. And we are so grateful for your tenacity and your energy and just all the hard work you put in for your team and for our kids.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I cannot do that without an amazing team of people, and we just are really blessed in Cadillac, and that's the community as well. Like I just keep describing our great town as like a big small town, because we function like a small town, but we're a bigger town. So it's pretty special. Wow.
Well, you make us all so proud.
It's been a pleasure, Jen, to have you on. You are welcome back anytime when you've got something you want to chat about. We would love to have you back on, maybe in advance of the 2022-23 school year. Maybe we can chat in August again.
Yeah, fantastic. I love it. And thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you. Jen Brown, Cadillac Area Public Schools Superintendent, our guest today on Cadillac Unscripted. Katy, we'll see you next week for another one here on 107.9 CDY, sponsored by Independent Bank.